Okay, hello everyone. Good morning to all of you, class. This morning we will continue our discussion about the causes of food spoilage. So, as all we know, there are many factors that causes food spoilage. Okay, there are bacteria, there are yeast, there are molds that can cause food spoilage, and there are also different factors to consider. Commonly, there are different catalysts, okay? There are different ways on catalysts that affect the growth of bacteria and affect the situation of a certain food and the reason why it is deteriorating or spoilage. So, yeah. So, we have it here, the bacteria. So, when we are talking the bacteria, this is an ubiquitous, means we can find it anywhere. Makita na to siya anywhere. So it is moingon itag ubiquitous bisan asa siya sa ato ang palibot na ay bacteria. So bacteria is really existing, okay, in the different places or um sa lain-lain nga lugar bisan pag moingon ta it's cleaned but bacteria is still exist. Okay? So, mo ta tong moingon ta nga, even if we sanitize, okay? Even if we sanitize, nagyapoy makita nga nagyapoy bacteria. Remember that bacteria is cannot be seen by our naked eyes. So mo na siyang importante kay siya nga mag-sanitize gyud ta. Okay? So bacteria are ubiquitous anywhere we can see them. And a minute unicellular microorganisms. When we're talking about unicellular, okay, single lang unicellular microorganisms. So means, ang iyang layer kung sa skin pa, one layered lang ang iyang skin or iyang protection. So mo ni siya ang bacteria. Commonly, this is unicellular microorganisms and cannot be seen with naked eyes. The growth of bacteria depends upon the specific kind of food, temperature, pH, or that means acidity, moisture, and oxygen. So bacteria are much more difficult to kill than molds. So, and and also by the yeast, and also the yeast. So, when you're talking about bacteria, so it is kindly difficult to kill than molds and yeast and are the most common causes of food spoilage. Commonly, when we're talking about food spoilage, in different aspects, when we are preparing food, when we are slicing the ingredients, when we are processing the food, or every time nga magunit sa pagkaon or the process that we are taking to process or to preserve the food. So every factor, every moves is considered nga una-unaon na to nga naay bacteria. Okay? So and they are present in two forms, in two phases. We have it here, vegetative and spore. So the difference, the vegetative and spore is ang kaliguno nila, ang kaisugon sa bacteria. So, which are active and resting form. Respectively, the vegetative form of bacteria are easily destroyed at boiling temperature. Kaya silang mga vegetative bacteria, these are commonly ang mga natural bacteria that can be easily destroyed. Mas dali silang nga ma-destroy, mas dali silang patyon through boiling temperature. Even a simple sanitizing of the area or the environment, vegetative form of bacteria can be easily destroyed at boiling temperature, whereas spore requires harsh treatment like the application of heat over within or over 100 degrees Celsius for a long time, for 6 hours, and it's 121 degrees under 15 psi or pressure for 30 minutes. Diba, when we are having our kitchen essentials, we've discussed also that there are bacteria, okay? There are bacteria that is heat resistant during the boiling temperature. So that means there are bacterias that can possibilities ano niya nga nagluto ka, okay, nagluto ka And then there are bacteria nga na-include ana sa imong pagkaon. It's because wala ka nag sanitize, wala ka nag clean, wala nimo hugasi ang imong pagkaon, and that it's carrying out ang bacteria. So what will happen man? So even if giluto ka, remember that in normal boiling temperature, okay, dili siya makaingon nga, di ka makaingon nga namatay na to ang tanang bacteria because there are two types of bacteria. The vegetative, which is less ang survival rate in terms about heating or in temperature. And then we have also the bacteria, ang spore type of bacteria, which is they can survive or they can sustain heat or during the normal boiling temperature. But mamatay rin ni siya once nga heat gid siya pag maayos. For example, to assure to assure that the can or the product is safe or free, or should I say we can avoid from spoilage para maka-assure ta that vegetative and spore bacteria is completely destroyed. Mao na siyang uban nga mga kaning company kaninay mga especially kaninay mga dilata store na nila og usa ka heating process or a process nga na-process ito ang nga nag-heat sa can, sa food and the can, or sterilizing the can and food. Okay? Nga di na siya mapuy-an pa og bacteria or the bacteria can be eliminated. Okay? So remember those things, vegetative form of bacteria and the spore type bacteria. So always remember that there are different transmission of bacteria. Could be in a physical hazard. Okay, it could be in a physical hazard transmission of bacteria. It could be in a microbiological or biological hazards. So pwede na siya matransfer ang bacteria. Even as to us human beings, as the one who handle the food, pwede na itong matransmit ang bacteria. Okay? So, we have it here another thing. Bacteria are celled microbes. The cell structure is simpler than than that of the other organisms, as there is no nucleus or membrane. Instead, their control center containing the genetic information is contained in a single loop of DNA. So, some bacteria have an extra circle of genetic material called plasmid, or um tawag na siya layer sa ilahang protection. Layer of protection of the bacteria. The plasmid often contains genes that give the bacterium some advantage over other bacteria. For example, it may contain a gene that makes the bacterium resistant to a certain antibiotic. So, ang antibiotic, guys, is mao man ni siya ang mopatay ang bacteria. So, but there are some bacteria that is resistant to antibiotic, and there are some also bacteria that are resistant to acidity or pH. So, when you talk about pH, that is the level of acidity in a food. So, always remember that bacteria is it's not easy for us to identify kung naa ba ni siya, present ba ni siya. So that's why we keep on following standard procedures in processing food or in food preservation, so that we can assure to avoid spoilage, so that we can assure that our food atong i-present sa atong guests is safe, or maybe atong ipakaon sa atong family na safety. Remember that when we are preparing food, we must always assure the safety. We must prioritize the safety and security of the food that we are preparing for our guests or for our family. Next is yeast. Okay, when we are talking about the dry yeast, kanatong gamiton sa baking, kana siya, mo na siyang mga active dry yeast. Pero napoy ubang yeast nga ginatawag nato, which is naa sa pagkaon na kanang mura siya magtibug-ol nga mo present sa pagkaon once nga mapanos ang pagkaon. So, yeast are microscopic unicellular fungi. Yeast are larger than bacteria in size. Yeast reproduce by process of budding. When you're talking about budding, kani siyang murag yung pares-pares mag-anak-anak na sila class. For example, from one cell, mo resulting na siya into budding process. Ang budding process is like for example ako like part of me ako ang i-separate. Okay? Mura ko mo anak og usa ka buok, then ang kanang usa nako ka part nga nahiwalay nako, mahimo na po na siyang another form of fungi or mahog na siyang yeast. So when you're talking about budding, mag-anak-anak ni siya. Mura siyang madouble, din mo anak, din ang kato na pong usa mo anak. That's why nga, dali-dali po ni siya mo daghan ang kaning yeast. So, and therefore known as true yeast. The bud, they fully mature, breaks away from the mother cell and becomes independent and repeats the process of multiplication. Kabantay mo kung if you have food nga masugdan na og ganang kuan, masugdan na og kanang kadaot, naay usahay depende sa pagkaon. Naay usahay nga man naay magtibok labi na kanina yung mga liquid type, okay, yung mga liquid type or cheesy type. Naay usahay siya yes kani murag matibog ulon niya moturok ang kanang iyahang kuan kanang mo na siya part nga matugkan og kanang molds. So, some yeast are very useful in making bread, beer, wine, vinegar, and many other fermented products. You know what? Yeast also is being used in fermentation. Okay, yeast are responsible for fermentation of fruits and fruit products. So yeast are undesirable when they grow on fruits, juices, squashes, sherbet, honey, and etc. So the difference between yeast dagway sa yeast or sa kaning yeast nga atong ginagamit and fermentation. So ang yeast nga ginagamit nato for fermentation is kaning yeast nga kaning kuan kaning galing powdered kani murag gagmay nga kuan kanang murag bula-bula nga gagmay. So mura siya kanang si tawag ani eh. Basta mura siya grains na nagagmay lang siya kayo. So mura siya powderized dapit pero dagko-dagko lang sa kanang kuan powder. So that is what we are using in the fermentation. So, yes, are undesirable when they grow on fruits, juices, squashes, or sherbet. Kay after aning yes, mo-form man dayon ni siya ang molds. Kabantay mo anang usahay kaning murag um sa juices pa na ay magtibog-ol ana niya nga yellow color, that is what we call yes. So more commonly these are yes nga makadaot. So lahi po to siya ang yes that is used for fermentation. So it can cause so for in the juices or fruits or squashes or sherbet honey in the or in honey, and it can cause spoilage. Okay, it can spoil the it can spoil the fruit, or it can spoil the food, and it can destroy the appearance, the taste, and texture, and the wholesomeness of the fruits and products. Okay? During the active fermentation, yeast can be recognized by formation of bubbles or carbon dioxide gas on the surface of the products. For example, maghimo mo og vinegar. Okay? Kung maghimo mo og vinegar, for example kaning suka sa lubi, kinsay naka-try diri og process og suka sa lubi? Nay naka-try ninyo process diri og suka sa lubi?
Pag wala ata niya.
Okay, wala pa naka-try. So, kung mag-process tag suka sa lubi class is makuha ta og kanang kuan kanang gitawag nila og kung sa laing term patuba, pero ang kanang tuba na siya is tungog. Na siya food coloring or pang pa-color, natural coloring kanang gitawag og tungog. So, kung ang kanang kuan duga gikan sa lubi or ang gitawag natong tuba nga walay color, mahimo na siyang suka atong ibulad sa init, and to make sure nga mas dali ang ihang fermentation process, ang uban ana mag-add og yeast. So, ang sa akong experience, gi-ferment na ko ang gi-ferment na mo ang suka sa lubim. Okay? Among gibuhat is ang kanang yes katong powderized nga yes, kay active yes, gibutang sa panaksan, gibutangan og ang lukewarm water, nya gibutangan gamay og ganang kuan, sugar, kay gibutangan gamay og sugar, and then pag action na og tubo sa kanang kuan, pag action na og tubo sa yes, amo siyang gisagol sa suka. Kay amo siyang gisagol sa katong tuba. And then after that, pag humang sagol, gibutang into kanang kuan, kanang jar. Then after that, gipasagdaan siya nga nibukal. So the process of fermentation, it is releasing of carbon dioxide. Okay, releasing of carbon dioxide, so forming of bubbles. So that means na ay carbon nga gipagawas gikan or na ay hangin nga gipagawas sa ilawom, gipagawas siya and then forms into bubbles, and that is a formation or extracting carbon dioxide gikan sa usa ka pagkaon or usa sa part sa food processing. Okay, a type of food fermentation. So we have it here, molds. So when we are talking molds, makailan na ito sa molds, no, kaning molds nga manurok sa ato ang kuan, kaning ato ang pagkaon. So molds are multicellular filamentous fungi. They grow on food with their fuzzy or cottony appearance, sometimes colored. Molds are larger and more complex in structure than bacteria or yeast. So um, they thrive best in closed, damp, and dark situation and require adequate supply of warmth, moisture, and air for growth. So they will grow kung naay moisture, naay presence sa air, and when we are talking about molds class, so ang kadugayon po sa pag-store nimo sa pagkaon, even if you prevent preserve the food, so di ginaton siya malikayan once there is a presence of air. Okay, there's a presence of moisture, imbalance of temperature, so mo-grow gid siya ang molds. And then they not only consume nutrients present in food, thereby lowering the food value, but also produce odd byproducts which spoil the flavor, taste, and texture of the food, hence change the quality contents of the entire product. So commonly, molds, once nga na molds gani sa imong pagkaon, that is automatically nga spoiled na gina siya. And the entire food is already destroyed. So remember, once there is a molds, there is a changes or destruction of nutrients in the food, destruction of the taste or deterioration of taste, deterioration of its appearance. And once kung maingon na ganita nga nanay molds, maingon na kita, oops, ayaw na ana kay makadaot na gina siya. Okay? It doesn't mean that you are preserving the food nga di makaingon na ka nga wala na siya, di na siya madaot. Madaot gihapon na siya. Because remember, in food preservation, we are just extending, okay, the life, okay, the shelf life of the food. It will not last forever. Okay? So di gid siya magdugay. Di gihapon siya ingon nga magdugay pag maayo. There is a specific time gihapon that would tell that a food is anhalang kutob and ang a food is mo extend pang iyahang life. So, factors affecting growth of microorganisms. Okay, so the factors that affects the growth of microorganisms, daghan siya na siya pito ka buok. So growth of microbes and their propagation in the food is one of the important factors to food spoilage. So there are different factors to consider. Okay, there are different factors or nay mga contributors why mo grow man ang usa ka microorganisms or bacteria mold or yeast sa usa ka pagkaon. They decrease the nutritive value and wholesomeness of the food. So, the growth of microorganisms, okay, will decrease the nutritive value of the wholesomeness of the food. Means the entire food will be affected. Okay, the entire food will be useless once it is already contaminated or being attacked with microorganisms. Okay, so hence the knowledge of the factors that favor or inhibit or prevent the growth of microorganisms is essential to an understanding of the principles of food spoilage or food preservation. So it is really needed that we will know and we must have the knowledge, okay, on the things or the processes that will lead into the prevention of growth of microorganisms. When you talk about inhibit, that means prevention, okay, or disallowing the growth of microorganisms or prevent the growth of microorganisms. So it is essential for us to understand the basic principles. Okay, the basic principles actually is being introduced. Okay, the basic principles is being introduced already. Okay, and I think it is being introduced also sa inyong risk management class. Okay, sa inyong risk management.
Si Miss
Lidl.
Maridel Fugarol,
Del
sir.
Samaral.
Ha?
Si Miss
Maridel
Maridel,
Fugarol.
sir.
Okay. So, nagtakol ba siya og mga bacteria? Lal- Nakalimot na.
Yes,
So,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Including
okay.
sa HISIP, sir.
Okay. So, um it is been tackled sa ato ang food science and sa ato ang kitchen essentials, and also ang kuan ang sa inyo pong risk. Actually, this part is commonly in the chapter 1, no, in the chapter 1 and 2 combination namin sa chapter 1 and 2 kani akong discuss, kani ako nag-unang discuss. So these are a combination of the basic principles in food processing. Mao na pa siya mga bacteria and what are to avoid. But inigabot na nato sa ato ang mga uban nga mga reporting na we will tackle about the different ways on food processing. Kaya ang atong major manggidria is food preservation. Okay, mga different types of food preservation. So, we have it here. So, the various factors that affect the growth of microbes are given as follows. Number one, nutrients and other constituents in foods. Number two, acidity. Okay. Number three, water content. Number four, physical and environmental factors. Number five, availability of oxygen. Number six, presence of inhibitory substances. Number seven, biological structure. So let's talk about first the factors affecting growth of microorganisms. Number one, which is nutrients and other constituents in food. So we have it here. Nutrients in food, their kind of proportions are all important in determining what organism is most likely to grow. So carbohydrates are the most preferred nutrients for microbial growth and are affected primarily by yeast and molds. So microbes degrade carbohydrates in food, resulting into production of alcohol. Okay? Then microbes break down fats into food, resulting into production of fatty acids. Fats are mainly digested by molds and few gram-negative bacteria. So nutrients and other constituents in foods. These are the nutrients nga naa sa usa ka food. So factors affecting growth of microorganisms, that means um ang kaning mga microorganisms class, they are type of bacteria that will eat nutrients. Okay? Ilahang kanon ang nutrients or unsay naa sa usa ka pagkaon. Like for example, kaning mga pagkaon nga naapay peel. Like for example, banana. Okay? Ito ang example ang banana. So, In times nga magka-hinog ang banana class, as you can say, di ba naasay kanang kuan naasay kaugalingon aka mag dat siya og black kung magkahinog. It's because it has a natural, okay, it has a natural bacteria upon harvest. Pag harvest pa lang niya or napa siya sa punuan, nanay bacteria nga nagakuyog sa iyahang nga panit, okay, or sa iyahang nga lawas. So that is the bacteria nga mga vegetative type of bacteria. So, kana sila guys, this type of bacteria really eat nutrients. Ilahang i-consume ang nutrients ang sa kapagkaon. That's why it will resulting into um food spoilage. And then time nga moabot is mag-produce og yeast, and then ang molds na dayon ang ma-produce, and then through the development of mold and yeast, the food will completely deteriorating and spoiled. So di na mapuslan ang usa ka pagkaon. Remember that these bacteria, yeast and molds, they are attacking the food nutrients, and they are destructing the taste, the appearance of the food. Okay, number two. So acidity. When you're talking about the level of acidity, this means when you talk about pH, this is the level of acidity in a food. So food having a pH below 4.5, and sa in food niya, food having pH below 4.5 and above 4.5 are classified as acidic and non-acidic foods respectively. So acidic foods are mainly spoiled by molds and yeast, whereas the non-acidic food are particularly attacked by bacterial spoilage, because there are some bacteria that can sustain into highest pH or acidity, but okay, there are also bacteria that can still sustain on acidity, depends on the percentage of acidity. But commonly, the spore bacteria can still also survive in um, acidic acidic substance. So we have it here. The acidic food are mainly spoiled by molds and yeast. Yes, kay kabantay mo aning kung naanay molds ang pagkaon or naanay yeast ang pagkaon, ang common reaction gid ani niya guys, the taste will turn into acidic. So maaslom na siya, no? Okay? So, the level of acidity, nang uban na maaslom or malain ang baho, maaslom ang baho. So, mo nang moingon ta, oops, nalain na lagi ni siya, naaslom na lagi ni siya. So, that is the level of acid nga ni increase. That is due to chemical reaction. Okay? So, in a food, there is a natural content of acid. Even our body, natay natural level of acid. Okay, but kung kita sa ato ang lawas class, kung sa lawas ba sa tao, the higher the acidic imuhang lawas, the more kapag barely nga magkasakit. Okay? It's not a good thing. Ang kanisang magkataas ang acidity sa imong lawas, nindot na siya. No, that is wrong. The more nga magkataas ang acidity sa imong lawas, the more nga the more nga dili siya nga maayo sa tuang lawas. So that is for the level of acidity. But in food, okay? Sa food sad class is kung lower ang imuhang level of acidity, i-target sad siya sa mga microorganisms or bacterial spoilage. It could be also for molds and yeast. But kung taasan ang imuhang level of acidity sa usa ka pagkaon, it will turn into acidic. Okay? Acidic food means mas dali pod siya nga i-capture sa molds and yeast. But there are some food processing or fermentation that would occur that commonly nga good sa ang ihang kalabasan when in terms about the level of acidity. Okay? And then, but commonly class, the level of acidity would turns into um the higher level of acidity is makadaot siya sa lawas sa tao. Okay? So number three, factors affecting the growth of microorganisms. So water content. So what is water content? Sabi siya, ang level of water nga naa sa usa ka pagkaon. Remember this one that it is a good thing also for bacteria For bacteria, depende sa level of water content sa usa ka pagkaon nga mo grow ang usa ka bacteria, yeast or molds. So, microbes required at least 13% free water, okay, free water for their growth, and it is best expressed in terms of available water or water activity. So when you are talking water activity, this is the presence of water. Okay, AW means water activity, the presence of water in a certain food or in a certain thing. So the average of water activity of pure water is 1.0, and many bacteria, yeast, and molds require 0.91 or 0.88 and 0.80 water activity respectively. So when there is a content of water, okay, in bacteria and yeast can grow, and also the molds. So foods preserved with salt or sugar concentration do not support growth of most microbes. So for example, salt concentration is 5 to 15% prevents growth of bacteria. So in a salt, it is 5 to 15% prevents growth of bacteria, whereas many molds and many yeast can tolerate more than 15%. Okay? So, in the number of in the number of amount of salt, okay, ang pagkaparat sa imuhang pagkaon mao ito ng when we are using salt in food preservation, mag-asin ta, mag-salting ta, nagihapoy part nga motubo ang molds, motubo gihapon ang yeast. It's because um during the food processing of salt, kung daghan na nimo ang asin, mas lesser gid ang mo-grow nga mga mold o bacteria. But kung lesser lang gali ang asin, so it can cause nga naapay motubo nga molds or yeast, or it could be bacteria. So in sugar concentration of 65% and above is required to prevent molds growth, where 50 okay where 50% do not allow bacteria, and most yes. So in sugar or sweetening preservation, commonly lesser ang chances niya sa growth of molds and bacteria and yeast because of the its percentage. Okay? So, when talking about the level, the presence of water contents, the more nga mas higher ang ato ang water content sa usa ka butang, but kung daghanon na to ang asin, it could be like 50% of um should I say, for example, sa usa ka jar, sa 1 liter nga kanang kuan, sa usa ka litro nga sudlanan, 1 jar nga ginamos, kay maghimo tag ginamos. So pila man kadaghanon ang imuhang asin. So make sure nga parat gyud siya. As you can see nga kung lesser ang ato ang asin sa ginamosad, mabaho sad siya because of the percentage acquired of the salt nga comparing sa percentage nga naa sa usa ka um, ginamos nga ato ang himuon. So, water content, kung magkadaghan ang water content, or if there is enough water content, and then masapawan ang content sa usa ka kanang kuan sa imuhang usa ka um, inhibitors, okay? Inhibitors na ginagamit especially kaning salt and sugar, of course, mas dako ang chances nga mo-grow ang usa ka bacteria. So we have it here, number four, which is physical and environmental factors. When we're talking about physical and environmental factors, these are commonly the temperature. Okay? The temperature and the physical things nga ato ang gina-attach or ang atong ginagamit sa ato ang food preservation. So, temperature of food affects the growth of microbes. Okay? Temperature affects the growth of microbes. Then the temperature in the ranges to 20 to 50 degrees Celsius is most suitable for the growth of microbes. Remember, class, Um, naka-remember pa mo tong danger zone temperature? Hello?
Wala ata kasi.
Hala, wala na mo ka-remember sa danger zone temperature?
37 na piso.
Katong kung when you are using Fahrenheit or Fahrenheit, um that was 40 to 140 Fahrenheit. Then 4 to 4 4 to 60 4 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees Celsius. That is the danger zone where bacteria can grow. Hala, nalimot tayo mo sa temperature, danger temperature. So, as you can see here, temperature of food affects the growth of microbes. Temperature in the range to 20 to 50 degrees Celsius is most notable for the growth of microbes. Kay kanin si 20 and 50 degrees Celsius, ni belong man siya or ni fall man siya sa danger temperature zone, which is ang danger temperature zone kung degrees Celsius, that is 4 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees Celsius. And then for the Fahrenheit, that is 40 Fahrenheit, okay? And then 140. So nabilong man siya. So there is a chance the growth of bacteria. So it is most suitable for the microbes to grow. So most of the bacterial pathogens of fruits and vegetables will grow between 6 and 35 degrees Celsius. So kani siya ang bacteria mo grow within to 20 to 50 degrees Celsius. And then for the fruits and vegetables, most bacteria will grow at the temperature of 6 degrees Celsius and 35 degrees Celsius. So some fungi will survive and even grow at low temperature at 1 degree Celsius on agricultural produce. Like for example, kaning mga um like aning bagyo kanang ginagmay ang mga temperature or laing countries, even is a fresh harvest fruits, vegetables, there are still bacteria or microorganisms nga motubo diha. It's because there are some fungi or there are some bacteria that can still grow, okay, in the temperature of 1 degree Celsius. Remember that when we are talking about the danger zone temperature, when we are talking about the danger zone temperature, that means this is the danger zone. This is the danger temperature. Okay? This is the danger temperature kung asa pwede mo grow ang bacteria. It has been or tackled in our kitchen essentials, the danger zone temperature. I think na topic man siguro ni gi-emphasize pa magay ni pag-exam. So remember that one ha. So, number five, availability of oxygen. Okay, when the availability of oxygen, naatay gitawag og duha ka availability, ang naalang na mention nandire is aero we have aerobic and anaerobic. So, availability of oxygens means when you talk about aerobic, okay? When we are talking about aerobic environment, tangtangon lang ng tangtangon lang na siyang an, and that will result into aerobic. So the term nga aerobic, that means that there is a presence of oxygen. There is a presence of oxygen in the environment. And then when we are talking anaerobic, there is a limited, okay? There is a limited or commonly wala gyud siya air content or oxygen content. Anaerobic means limited oxygen or no oxygen presence. So, anaerobic or or limited oxygen environment, microorganisms are mainly involved in the spoilage of airtight canned food under anaerobic condition. Oxygen is necessary for mold to growth. So, as what I've said, di ba, kaning-galing sa mga canned goods or kaning mga cans, guys. So, if you are preparing for canned goods, di ba niingon ko nga importante nga unsa gali nga presence, unsa gali nga factor ang tangtangon or presence? or element ang tangtangon ko magkanta, magkaning. Hello? Pero mo ko estudyante ani oy. So,
So,
the presence that you need to eliminate, okay, in canning is kanishang air. It's because once there is a presence of oxygen, okay, or air content in a specific food, especially in canning, it would create into food spoilage. Muna siya kan if we buy kanang mga canned goods sa usa ka area, usa ka grocery store, make sure nga kana galing wala siya lumping. So kung nanay lumping ang usa ka canned goods, so that might resulting into unsa man. So that will resulting into food spoilage. Ano man. So naan naman siya air content. Okay, na available nga oxygen. Even dili na kadaghanon but still nisingaw lang siya gamay and through the presence of imbalance, okay, temperature, tiwasan pa dyan sa imbalance temperature and that's the time nga naanay moisture. Once there is a presence of moisture, there could be a food spoilage. So once nga naana siya mahitabo nga process of food spoilage, so bacteria can grow and molds can grow na sa usa ka can. Muna siya kung mopalit kay mo canned goods, ayaw mo palit og kanang nanay lumping. Kay possibilities ana nadaot na siya. Okay? So, number 6, presence of inhibitory substance or when you're talking about inhibitory substances are the substances that prevent the functions, okay? Inhibit the functions of other chemicals, okay? Other substances sa usa ka pagkaon. So, inhibitory substance originally present in food, added purposely or accidentally or developed thereby prevent growth of microorganisms. So, the presence of inhibitory, it could be COPC 15 sa man sa to sa HM. Okay, sige sige sir. Thank you. So, availability of nasa asa na ta? Presence of inhibitories. Okay. So, the inhibitors, these are the factors that would prevent other chemical reaction that would lead into the growth of microorganisms or and lead into the growth of that would lead to um the growth of molds or bacteria. So, there are some inhibitors that is physically added, okay, or commonly mahitabo siya as a chemical reaction as what we call chemical reaction. Once nga natay usa ka element nga ibutang, and then there is another element natong ibutang or chemical nga ibutang and another chemicals nga ibutang or elements, then there is a chemical reaction. Wala ta kabalo class kung unsa nga chemical reaction ang pwedeng mahitabo. The only one who can understand ani nga situation kung unsa nga mga inhibitors or unsa nga mga chemicals or unsa nga mga presence of factors to consider or growth sa usa ka pagkaon is ang kanila yung mga nag-scientist or moagi gyud og experimentation. So once nga niagi ta og experimentation class, okay, niagi ta og experimentation, so that means that makita na to dito ang entire nga process, makita na to dito unsa di ay unsay kalainan. The only thing nga atong concern is dili man ta maka face to face and we don't have the laboratory nga maka kuan jud ta no, maka experiment jud ta. It is good to experiment but it is not our duty anymore to do some experimentation. That's why um BFAD man siguro na siya no kanang, or if the Food and Drugs Authority or if the FDA ba po na siya ang kanang um maga-check sa pagkaon Okay, mga food sa pagkaon. If what are the microorganisms, what are the chemical reaction, and then the result of chemicals nga naa na ba diha due to chemical reaction, okay pa ba na siya, or makatabang ba na siya, or makahilo ba na siya? So that is for the presence of inhibitory substances. So we have here number seven, biological structure. When we are talking from the biological structure, it's natural structure, natural structure. So the biological structure of food has a protective function against food spoilage. So when we are talking about natural, unsa may iyahang natural appearance, unsa may iyahang natural structure upon harvesting. Okay, the inner parts of the whole healthy tissues or living plants and animals are either sterile, okay, or low in microbial content. An increase is exposed to surface due to peeling, skinning, chopping, and mincing distribute spoilage. So, biologically, structure class, these foods, kani mga fruits, vegetables, they are totally protected with its natural structure. They are natural structure in the sa skin. So they are totally protected. Okay? They are totally protected with some spoilage or some bacterias nga pwedeng mo affect or mo infect sa ilaha. But literally also, there are natural microorganisms, okay? Natural microorganisms nga naa sa sulod sa pagkaon mismo. It is natural nga embodied nila nga naa sila yung mga microorganisms. Okay? So, in biological structure, once it's peeled, okay, once there is an exposure, so the exposure of air, the presence of air, the presence of oxygen would also affect, okay, sa usa ka pagkaon. Like for example, if you peel banana, okay, di ba? Naturally niya kung dili pa siya ingon padung naka overripe, dili pa man siya ingon madaot. But once you peeled it, imo na kani siyang panitan. So, through process of peeling, so that means there is an enzymatic browning process. So enzymatic browning process is a chemical reaction um once a food is exposed to air. So once nga ma-expose na siya sa air and into different kuan na, for example, na expose po siya sa bacteria, it would result into enzymatic browning. Once there is enzymatic browning already, so the bacterial growth is free. So pwede na sila makagrow. Then the yeast will start growing also. And then after that, the molds. So, muna siyang importante yun siya kayo to consider the biological structure. But commonly, biological structure class is ang natural structure man ni sa usa ka pagkaon. So, anhanan ni siya madaot once, okay? Anhanan ni siya ma-destroy once nga ma-overripe na siya or improper storage or through peeling, skinning, and chopping. Ganhan na mausab ang pagkaon. Ganhan na siya pwedeng i-attack para ma-destroy siya. Okay. So, we have it here. Spoilage. Okay, spoilage due to enzymatic activity. So enzymatic activity, this is the chemical reaction. Okay, so enzymes are complex chemical substance which are present in all living organisms and tissues, which control essential metabolic process. So different biochemical reactions in food and plants tissues are catalyzed by enzymes. So there is a chemical reaction. So enzymatic spoilage. Okay, so enzymatic spoilage is the greatest cause of food deterioration. So um in enzymatic spoilage, guys, there is a catalyst that would lead into catalyst is it leads into chemical reaction. So in a chemical reaction, okay, this is leading to food spoilage and food deterioration. So they are responsible for certain undesirable or desirable changes in fruits, vegetables, and other foods. Example involving endogenous enzymes includes, so the harvest of um The post harvest of senescence or deterioration and spoilage of fruit and vegetables. So the harvest senescence, this means this is a process of the start of deterioration. Once the fruit is already harvested, it is the start of process of the senescence or the start of the small continuous deterioration of the food. Okay, is nagsugod na ang iyang process. Nag-start na siya once nga imo na siyang i-harvest. Okay? Then sugar, starch conversion in plant tissues by amylases or the elimination of sugar. So when we are talking about it is a breaking down, okay? Break down na to ang sugar. Okay? When we are talking about sugar, okay, kaning mga starchy nga food, kini mga starchy, remember starch can turn into sugar. Okay? So, starch conversion, okay? Conversion of sugar in plant tissues is can lead into food spoilage because of elimination of sugar. Okay, it is breaking it down, and the nutrients is attacked by molds or kaning mga bacteria and destruction of nutrients. So we have it here, the post-harvest demethylation. So removing of carbon of pictic acid. So demethylation, removing of carbon of pictic acid substances in plant tissues, leading to softening of plant tissues during ripening and firming of plant tissues during processing. Okay? So, demethylation, it is a removing of carbon. Okay? It is a removing of carbon in a specific food and removing of the substances of pictic acids. So, there is um, a deterioration process nga once nga we harvest, okay? After the entire process of harvesting, and then you will stock the food, imong gitanugan ang food, there are some chemical reactions, there are some nutrients that would deteriorate or maanam o kawala. So once nga mag-anam siya og kawala, so that means, so ang usa ka food, mag-anam og kalata. Okay, mag-anam og kalata, and those are sauon na pud siya sa high acidity. Motaas ang level sa acidity, kabantay mo kung madaot ang usa ka pagkaon kay magkaaslom or ang fruit, maminaw ka nga okay aslom naman ni siya. Oy, except lang if ang mangga is bag-o pang i-harvest, kanang hilaw pa, aslom gyud na siya naturally, that it's for its natural na niya. So, but when we are talking about the ripening of the food in Muaslom na siya, it is already invaded. Okay, it invaded with different enzymes, and then pwede na siyang ma-infected with microorganisms that will lead into food spoilage. So we have it, if enzymatic reaction is uncontrolled, the off colors may develop in food and food spoilage. So the color will change, the texture will change, and that will lead into food spoilage or food deterioration. So factors, asa naman to? Okay, factors affecting enzymatic activity. So, factors responsible for controlling enzymatic activities are temperature, water activity, acidity, and chemical, which are can inhibit or enhance enzyme activity. So, in all there are different factors to consider chemical reaction. So, kaning mga chemical reaction class, okay, chemical reactions in a certain food. So, of course, i-consider na to ang temperature, i-consider na to ang water activity or water level, pH, that is acidity or the acid level, and the chemicals which can inhibit, okay, or enhance the enzyme activity. So, we have it here. Another thing, enzymes can out between 0 degrees Celsius and 260 degrees Celsius, but 37 degrees Celsius is optimum temperature. So enzymes can be permanently inactivated by heat. Okay, and it has been seen that for each 100 degrees Celsius rise in temperature, the activity of microorganisms and enzymes increases by at least twice. Okay, in the range of 0 to 60 degrees Celsius, above this, heat quickly destroys enzymes and stops living cells from working. All enzymes are inactivated at 80 degrees Celsius. Decreased temperature, therefore, work by slowing down these changes. So, um, we have it here spoilage due to insects and pests and rodents. So the main categories of food subject to insects and pests attack are fruits, vegetables, grains, and their processed products. Warm, humid environment promote insect growth, although most insects will not breed in the temperature exceeds above 35 degrees Celsius or falls to below to 10 degrees Celsius. Many insects cannot reproduce satisfactorily unless the moisture contents in their food is greater than 11%. So, the presence of insects and pests in their excreta in food may render consumable loss in the nutritional quality. Production of flavors and acceleration of decay processes due to the creation of higher temperatures and moisture levels and release of enzymes. The products of insects and pest activities such as webbing, clump together, food particles, and holes can also reduce the food values. Okay, once there are insects or pests or rodents in the area, or it the food is being attacked, for example fruits, so possibilities gud na siya it would lead into deterioration once nga mapahaka na siya, maihian ba na siya, or there are some aspects to consider about the invasion of insects and pests and rodents. So rats and mice carry disease producing microorganisms on their feet and or in their faces and urine and contaminate the food by their presence. So contamination, guys, this is what we are talking about, biological contamination. So, when we're talking about biological contamination, these are contamination exposing or contaminated or resulting into food deterioration or lessen the food value because of the reasons nga gi-invade siya or affected by the insects, pests, and rodents, or especially kanidyong mga ilaga o ukok. So, kani sila commonly gyud. So, spoilage due chemical reaction. So spoilage due to chemical reaction. So as all we know, we have it here. We have chemical hazards, right? So chemicals reaction. We have also chemical hazards, and we have also chemical reactions. So chemical reaction takes place in the presence of atmospheric oxygen and sunlight, two major chemical changes which occur during the processing and storage of fruits and vegetables are lipids oxidation and non-enzymatic browning, which deteriorate sensory quality, color, and flavor. So, the lipids oxidation is influenced by light, oxygen, light temperature, and presence of iron and copper, and water activity. Controlled on these factors can significantly reduce the extent of lipid oxidation or rancidity in foods. Non-enzymatic browning is one of the major causes of deterioration, which takes place during frying, cooking, storage of dried and concentrated foods through Maillard reaction, caramelization, and ascorbic acid oxidation. So Maillard reaction occurs due to the reaction between reducing sugars and amino acids in the presence of heat and results in formation of black brown insoluble pigments, caramelization of sugar occur in presence of high heat and low moisture content in food, oxidation of fatty acids to other chemical like aldehydes, ketones, alcohols, and esters also result in off flavors. So okay, generally due to chemical reaction, okay, when we process foods, okay, when we process foods, commonly we don't know what are the exact thing happening during the chemical reactions when we once we are doing food process or food preservation. So since that in our basic knowledge in cooking, we tend also to prioritize food safety in preparation because that is our number one duty when we are preparing food. So chemical reaction commonly, we will understand chemical reaction, okay, chemical reaction once there is an experimentation. We will understand what are the exact, okay, what are the things exactly happening if we are doing this type of process. Remember that in the different types of process that we will be using in food preservation or in food processing, the steps, the ways on how you mix the food, the ways on how you add the sugar, add the salt, there are some chemical reaction happening. Like for example, in kimchi, there are different ways or techniques. Okay, there are some also different ingredients that would lead into the different flavors for the kimchi. We have the sour, sweet and sour, na atay natural nga flavor. So it will depends also on on the ingredients that you are using. Okay? So that is for the spoilage due to chemical reaction. So we have it here. The last one is spoilage due to physical factors. So spoilage due to physical factors, it is commonly that such as temperature, moisture, and pressure can also cause food spoilage.
Ate,
So um um physical chem ah, na-mute na ba to? Okay. Okay. Physicochemical reactions are caused by freezing, burning, drying, and bruising of fruits and vegetables during storage, handling, and transportation, which result in food deterioration. So, kana mga bunog ang atong pagkaon, okay? Ang sobraan kay sa freezing, okay, sa pag-drying and the bruises, and especially when the time nga harvest ang pagkaon or ang fruits, for example, fruits, kung nabunog siya, that would lead into food deterioration. Food processing or storage causes some deterioration in color of fruits and vegetables due to the degradation of the chlorophyll, resulting dull olive brown color. Okay, natural gina siya. So, dehydrated green peas and beans packed in glass containers undergo photooxidation and loss of desirable colors occurs. So, induced damage and observed in frozen foods affect its quality. Anthocyanins Anthocyanins, the pigments in fresh and processed foods, form complexes with metals resulting into change in color. Example, red sour cherries react with tin and form undesirable purple complex. Carotenoid, another color pigments, degrades by oxidation in the presence of oxygen, light, and heat. So, in general speaking, this is commonly this is chapter 1 and 2 is most commonly on introduction of the food and safety and the chemical reaction and what are the things to consider, the basic knowledge in food preservation and food safety handling, and the introduction of the giving of um understanding bacteria, yeast, and molds. Since we are in a food preservation, it doesn't mean that we are in a food processing that we are already providing all the needed things. We are providing all the safety things. But you need to consider also that in every factor, it could be aerobic environment or could be an aerobic environment, or maybe you are boiling the temperature, you are boiling that into it at highest temperature. Always remember that bacteria is ubiquitous. Okay, that means bacteria can be seen anywhere, and even if you're done in the food processing, it can still, okay, it can still be infected, or it can still be um um contaminated by bacteria or molds or yeast. It's because even if we're done with the process, still remember that there are natural factors in the environment, biological factors to consider, physical factors to consider. So in food preparation, it is really needed to understand what are the safety and the hazards that we need to consider. Always remember nga atay tulo ka mga hazards. We have chemical hazards, we have biological hazards, and we have the physical hazards. So in food processing and food preservation, we need to consider the two. And in food preservation, we need also to consider different factors. Okay, we need to consider different factors. A lot of factors to consider, like temperature, the storage, the preparation of the food, how you prepare the food, the ingredients that you are using. Okay? So remember that in every ingredients, in every ways or the steps that you will be applying in food processing, especially in food preservation, that would leads to into different chemical reaction, the breaking of catalysts and enzymes. Okay? So that is what we have in chapter 1 and chapter 2. So later on, um naay mga reporters nga mag-discuss sa topic nga topic na chapter 3, 4 and 5. So I think murag tan-awon pa nako, i-confirm pa ni nako, i-verify pa ni nako og until chapter 4 ra ba ko or until chapter 5. So I will be that is the end for the discussion for chapter 1 and chapter 2. So okay, lesson 3.